Okay, cool. Hi, everyone, and thank you, Alex, for that introduction. I'm Megha. I'm from California, and I was on Team Cosmos. My project is called Sexual Education Mock Legislation. But before we get into that, a little bit about me is that I spend my free time reading, thrifting, creating all these specific Spotify playlists, including one that kind of reminds me of what an alien invasion would sound like. And I really like photography. To the top left is a photo of the entire team together, and underneath that is a photo of me and my mock trial team when we competed in September. And I also discovered I have a fear of barnacles while I was in New Hampshire during the immersion trip. Okay. So the problem that I'm trying to combat with my project is that 38 out of the 50 states in the US mandate sex education or HIV education. Only 17 of those require medically accurate information, and only 11 of those states require education on consent. This is a problem because not having requirements for medically accurate information means that lots of misinformation spreads. And because sex education or HIV education isn't required in all 50 states, if there isn't misinformation, it's likely that there just isn't information. Not only that, currently the teen birth rate in the United States is 15.4% and is likely to rise in coming years. Furthermore, education on certain topics, especially sexual violence, are slim to none. And even though there are conversations that take place depending on your location on how to say no, the conversations don't happen often, and they don't talk that much about different examples of sexual violence. As I was navigating my own experiences with sexual harassment and assault, I wasn't sure where to turn because even though I knew the effect that it had on me, I didn't exactly know what to quantify my experience as. And as I was talking to other people about my experiences and just sex ed in general, I realized that the education that one gets during a sex ed class is often minimal, and I wasn't alone in feeling confused about what had happened. So I want the research that I do to help destigmatize sex and HIV and different STDs and the things that are talked about during sex ed and increase awareness. Not only that, talking about sex ed is extremely important. So if there's a push for students to be learning about their future, taking classes like math and science, students should also be able to learn how to be safe and protect themselves. We spend so much time in school learning about topics that a lot of people don't use depending on their career fields, but sex ed is something that everyone needs to know about and that is important to everyone's life. So one of the reasons that, or some reasons that it needs to be addressed and overhauled in the US is, for one, the multiple inconsistencies between states and inaccuracies. Because of how inconsistent information is and the fact that information is not required to be medically accurate in many states means that there are gaps in information from state to state, and it disproportionately affects people in rural areas. There's also the issue of many students not receiving access to sex ed until after they've had sex for the first time, or they just don't receive it at all, which causes serious misconceptions that can last a lifetime. Many generations, including my own, have seen firsthand the problems that can arise from inaccurate sex education. And while this solution would only impact future generations, it can lead to massive changes in our society and how we look at sexual health, consent, and reproduction, and improve the lives of future generations by giving them access to accurate and safe information. Some of the dangers of not increasing or addressing this issue are that it can lead to an increase in STDs, sexual violence, and teenage pregnancies, amongst other lifelong issues. So in terms of the project that I'm doing, my plan has 3 stages: research, compilation, and advertising. The research stage is the most time consuming, and I have begun already. What I'll be doing, and this is probably like the main focus of my project, is combing through current education code and legislation from various states throughout the nation. I'll also be looking at facts and statistics on medically accurate, safety-focused information Once I complete the research, I'll compile it into a piece of mock legislation. And then following the compilation of this, I'll be reaching out to various organizations and individuals with the mock legislation that I've created and make them aware of it, and as well as reach out and see if there's a chance that I can take this process further. I'm currently in the process of doing this on a micro level scale before writing the full legislation, which will be many pages long, since I happen to have the opportunity to submit a piece of mock legislation of my choice written by me to an organization that I'm involved in by the end of this month. And if the bill is selected to be presented, I will get to talk about this project with students from all over Southern California at the beginning of February, which I'm hoping will just garner further interest in the bill and help raise awareness. So the monetary cost, currently I put that at $2,500, and in terms of time consumed, I put that at 2 to 4 hours per week, but it will vary from week to week. Most of these costs are pretty minimal, as they just involve printing costs and paper costs. However, the bulk of the budget is comprised of outreach costs in the form of advertising and boosting awareness of this project, access costs for materials that provide information or certain pieces of legislation, and potential travel costs. As I've already mentioned, I do plan to outreach this bill to various organizations throughout the nation, as well as educators, lawyers, and legislators. So much of the predicted monetary costs are due to any potential travel costs to meet with those people. So my three goals, or my three main goals for this project, are first, to identify the three biggest problem areas in sex ed, to find information which addresses those areas, and then three, collect a bill based on the information that I compile. And then after this, once I compile that information, my fourth goal is to advertise it to 10 legislators. Then after I get this information, I'm not just going to hang on to it. I'm not going to let it go to waste, because even though I don't necessarily have the resources to work on making this a reality myself, I will do my best to put this into the hands of people who can make it more accessible to people all over the nation. And that is it. And this is the link to my GoFundMe.